Hey folks, this is Ben from ultrabooknews.com. I've got the Vaio Duo 13 behind me, one of the first Haswell-based Ultrabooks on the market, and it has an active digitizer touchscreen, which means I can use this nice stylus. So today we're going to be looking at the stylus and a couple different applications to see how well it works. So let's focus the camera in over there and take a look. So let's start off with a look at the stylus itself, which is right here. It's a really nice, probably one of the nicest styluses I've ever seen. Styli, whatever the plural of stylus is. It's metal and has a nice little clip here. The battery goes in the top right here. It takes a single AAA. And it's got a really nice feel to it. It doesn't have an eraser on the back like some styluses do. It does have two buttons here, one of which functions as a right-click button, and the other one I think is just for whatever you want to bind it to. I haven't found any explicit uses for it. And of course the tip is pressure sensitive, and yeah, if you've used a tablet PC before, you'll know what this is like. If you haven't used a tablet PC before with an active digitizer, it's important to understand that this is different than a capacitive stylus. So what a capacitive stylus does is basically takes the same electrical fields from your fingers and channels them into a tip that lets you use the touchscreen as though it were your finger. That's very different than this, which is an active digitizer, which actually senses the pen tip and the pressure of the pen, and it allows for a lot much more natural handwriting, note-taking, and drawing and that stuff. So that's why it's great to have an active digitizer. It's something that I've been missing from Ultrabooks since I went from a tablet PC to an Ultrabook, so it's pretty cool to have it back on here. So there's a couple different applications that I'd like to take a look at and show you how they work. And I want to start off by saying I'm pretty sure that this is not a Wacom digitizer. That's one of the more popular companies that makes them out there, so they're widely supported in applications. I believe this is using a digitizer from a company called N-Trig, and you'll see later that that's going to have at least one pretty big issue for us. But let's start off with an included program that came pre-installed called ArtRage Studio Pro, and this is version 3.5.5, so this is, I believe, the full version that comes installed thanks to Sony. And this application is really cool, way cooler than I thought it was going to be, actually. I haven't used this previously, but for a bundled piece of software, it's pretty neat. So this does a really good job of kind of really creating the experience of what it's like to work with not a digital medium, but it kind of tries to recreate actual painting and all that stuff. So we've got our canvas here, which may be a little hard to see, but I can change the size of it and move it with multi-touch, which is nice. So I can kind of go back and forth between rearranging and actually drawing, which is really handy without having to go to any settings or anything like that. So this is cool because there's a bunch of tools down here at the bottom left. It's a little bit off the frame for you, but there are something like, I don't know, 12 or 15 tools. So I've just got the paint roller right now. My color selector's over here, so I'll start with a green. And I can just roll this around. And right now this isn't pressure sensitive. But if you look carefully, and it may be hard to tell on the video there, but this is actually laying down basically digital paint. So when I go back over it, it deepens the color. And one of the really neat things, you can actually mix paint. So right now I just selected the paint tube tool, so I just kind of put a splotch of paint down here, and I'll pick another color, put a splotch of paint over here, and now I'll grab a brush, and I can actually, if I do it with my finger, I can get it wider. You can probably see the brush strokes in there. I can actually brush these two colors together, and when I mix them together, you can see I have a different color. I have a darker green than just the light green or the blue alone. So you can really actually mix colors, and you can see the streaks in the paint as though I was using a real brush, which is pretty cool. One weird thing that I found is, so when you're finger painting, you get these really wide strokes, regardless of what you do. There is pressure sensitivity here, but when I paint with the stylus, I'm pressing very hard right now, and that's as wide as I can get it to go, even though the pen or the tool width is set to 100%. I'll check right now to see if I can increase it beyond 100%. Okay, yeah, so let me turn it up to 150. So it seems like I would be able to just bump that up to, say, 200% if I wanted it to be as thick as the finger painting. It's a little inconvenient because you can kind of do a quick selection down here to adjust how wide you want your tool to be by dragging, and it only goes between 0 and 100%, so you'd have to type that in every time. Let me start a new canvas here real quick. Just to show you all the options here, so you can set your size in pixels, or you can do print size and set your DPI. You can pick the canvas you want. So this is, or you can pick the type of paper you're on. Essentially, this is canvas right here. There's grid paper, I believe, and several different types of canvas, rough paper. There's blackboard, candy wrapper. So there's a lot of options here. It's actually pretty fun to mess around. This is way more fun than I had anticipated being. So let me just start a new canvas here, and I want to show you a little bit more about kind of the cool paint simulation. So if I have a wide brush here at 100%, I'm actually going to bump that up to 200% so we can see what that does. And so if I start painting, it's applying a certain amount of paint to my brush, and you can actually see if I keep going, eventually I'm going to run out of paint here. So the paint only has, or the brush only has a finite amount of paint, although it is quite a bit here, it would seem. Or perhaps I'm just, oh nope, at the very end there it tapered off. So let me see if I can get that again. So this may actually have to do with how much the width is. Yeah, let me start a new canvas for you so I can see that better, and I'll test it with my finger so that it can be wide without having so much paint. It seems like the higher you turn up the tool size, the more paint it applies, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So see right there, it actually runs out of paint. And now if I grab another color and run that down and run over there, now you can actually, the way it applies new bits of paint onto the faded parts is really cool. You may be able to see the streaks again in the green over here. So if I go like this and keep swirling around, I actually smooth out those streaks very much like you would if you had real paint and a paintbrush. So that's really neat. This program has tons of options. There is tracing you can do, and like I said, all the different tools. It has layers too, which is really neat because you can get the benefits of working with a simulated physical medium with the advantages of working in the digital space, which lets you use layers, which are super powerful. And that menu is over here, and they've got a bunch of different blending modes, very much like Photoshop, and it looks like you can merge layers and do all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. One disappointing thing is that when I went to check for an update to this application, it told me that there was a brand new one available, Art Rage Studio 4 I think it was, but that wasn't included. So you're not actually getting the latest version, which is kind of a shame because it's a brand new computer. You would hope it's installed with the latest stuff, but unfortunately not. As far as the tracking goes, I mean, it's spot on. It's, it really sticks with you, which is nice. I've had some slowdown issues before, which were fixed with a restart, where it would be really tight, but after a certain stroke went too long, it would get really sluggish and kind of catch up later. But after a restart, as I said, that was fixed. So it seems like it's a little bit taxing to actually do all this paint simulation and stuff for this program. So you want to make sure you're not running anything big in the background. Alright, so that's enough for Art Rage Studio. Let's move along to another application. And I want to say now that Evernote Touch, which you may be familiar with, I've used Evernote in the past on a tablet PC. That was my go-to tool for digital inking. But Evernote Touch, unfortunately, does not support any sort of pen input, so that's kind of a shame. So I have the desktop Evernote version here, and we'll just take a look at that real quick with a new note. It's been a while since I've used this, so I'm going to have to actually make a new ink note, I believe. Yep, here's one. So this gives you, this is more for note-taking, much less artwork, of course. And I'll just write out a couple sentences here to get a feel for it. Pretty sure that's not the real intro. But so yeah, it's great for writing. The cool thing about Evernote is it will take the text that you write and make it searchable. So you can take handwritten notes and then search for certain words that you had in there, which can be really great for students or anyone who's taking notes in meetings and needs to refer to them later without physically or manually looking through them, which is a pain. So this works just as well as usual. There's not that many tools. It does have pressure sensitivity, as you can see, so I can draw a really light line if I'm light, or a dark line if I press harder. And I believe there are some additional options in here. I do know that you can use the right click. Let's see if I can get that to work too. There we go. Highlight. Oh, that's erase right there. So you can erase stuff kind of piece by piece, which is really handy if I want to, change this word here. I can say, I can easily cut it out and change it. I guess I'll have to use the selection tool manually, but you can select individual bits of words, which is really cool because if you, scribble a little note, oops. If you're scribbling a little note, down there and you have all this text up here, it's great because you can decide, where you want to place this. You can scale it if you want, which is really nice. Just helps for organization because, sometimes you'll be writing and then you'll start a new section and then you need to go back, and when you can rearrange all the pieces, it's much nicer than having a real physical notebook without, having to erase or cross stuff out or draw arrows all over the place. So that is Evernote for the desktop, and now we're going to jump into Photoshop, which you may be familiar with. And I have some unfortunate news for anyone that was interested in using the Duo 13 with Photoshop. And that is apparently the N-Trig Digitizer here doesn't really work with Photoshop. So, I can draw with a brush, but there's no pressure sensitivity. I've tried turning on kind of some of the tools up here that are supposed to work with pressure. So this is always use pressure for size. And then, so here's really light, and now I'm pressing really hard, and it makes no difference at all. With some of the Wacom tablets out there, it senses, a whole different levels of pressure. There's tons of configuration you can do with it. It can even detect the angle of the tip to get different styles and stuff, but it just doesn't work here, which is a shame. And I looked a little bit into it, and it sounds like it is the fault actually of Photoshop not supporting the Windows standardized versions of touch or pen input. So at some point, Microsoft said, let's standardize this. But Wacom and Adobe are using some other solution to do it, and they kind of can afford to do that because they're both the industry standards, if you will. So it's kind of this battle between Microsoft saying do the standard, and Adobe and Wacom are saying, well, we are the standard in our industry, so we're not going to change, which really sucks for the end user, because I've seen a lot of people saying, and myself included, I was excited to use this pen with Photoshop, and I can't, which, that's unfortunate. So, you basically, in this, you're using it as you would a cursor, which is, sometimes when you want to get those strokes that you could never do with a mouse, it's nice, but it's a totally different experience to be able to have the pressure and all of the options that you need. So we will jump out of this one, go on to our next, which is another included application called Note Anytime Vaio. And this one, as the name implies, is much more, it is much more about note-taking, whereas Art Rage Studio is about art. Unfortunately, this interface is abysmal and just really confusing. It doesn't follow the normal, Metro-style applications at all that you might be familiar with in Windows 8. There's the store, here's the calendar. They're all kind of familiar. And then you go to Note Anytime Pro, and it's just this thing. I'm kind of amazed that it's well, I mean, I don't think it would ever pass as an application you could download from the Microsoft Store because it doesn't follow those guidelines, but it can be pre-installed, which it was. Aside from the bad interface, it works pretty well. So you can start a new note and pick a bunch of different types of paper. So I can get a grid right here, or graph paper, if you will. And unfortunately, this one doesn't support pressure. So I can, whoops, thanks Windows 8. I can do different line widths by selecting them, but not by pressure. I don't know that this, I'm fairly certain that this does not support text search like Evernote does. But, as far as taking notes goes, it's pretty nice. It has a lot of the same tools for being able to rearrange and resize, and in this case rotate, which I don't believe Evernote has, which is nice. It's got stickers and different types of paper, so you can do kind of a scrapbooking thing, but definitely more oriented towards note taking, as you can make folders and tag stuff and other things like that. I also want to briefly mention, or at least demonstrate, the way that the pen works or doesn't work on the Metro or touchscreen part of Windows 8 here. So, you're used to using your finger here, so you figure the pen will swipe along, but it doesn't. I mean, it kind of ends up functioning like a mouse, or, well, it does function like a mouse. So if I was using the trackpad down here, let me get that into view for you. If I'm using the trackpad here, and I drag back and forth, it doesn't move anywhere, just, that's how it works. So when you're using the stylus here, it's just thinking it's a normal mouse. So you can grab the scroll bar down here and move back and forth, but that's not very handy. So, you end up using touch to do most of it, and you can tap on icons, and that works. And it's that kind of happens too in some of the other applications. So if I go here to on our site here, you can scroll up and down with the finger and zoom in like normal, and you'd think you'd be able to do that with the stylus too, but actually it's still functioning just like a mouse, so it's highlighting things, and you can't do any scrolling. However, if you have some text fields in here that you go into, it'll automatically bring up the tablet input panel for you to write into, which is handy, but not all applications will do that. This is the Internet Explorer browser for Windows 8, but if I were to go into Chrome for the desktop and I tap in here to type, it doesn't come up automatically. I have to tap the keyboard icon down here to bring it up. The last thing we're going to take a look at is Windows' own built-in handwriting recognition. So to do that, I think I'm going to bring us into Notepad. Actually, I may as well do it right here. So to get to what's called the TIP, the TIP, or the tablet input panel, or was formerly anyway, tap this keyboard button down here, the bottom left, and select the one that appears to have a little pen in it. And now we have this space down here that we can write and have handwriting recognition. I'm back now after a quick screen cleaning break. I've also adjusted the lighting a little bit to hopefully get some of the glare or smears out of your vision. So anyway, we were looking at handwriting input. So I've got the tablet input panel open down here, and back in the day you used to have to basically train the computer to pick up your handwriting. So far it hasn't prompted me to do that, and the recognition has actually been quite good. And so this little question mark button up here that you can tap shows some really tiny little introductions to how you can work this. I'm pretty familiar with it, but check that out if you are new to this. So I'm just going to write a couple sentences, and you can take a look and see how it's going to recognize my bad handwriting. So everything there was great, except instead of picking up my name Ben, picked up Den. There's a couple letters that it really doesn't like the way that I write, and I haven't found a good way to tell it the way that I write them. So I'll put my B in here, and okay, it did get that, which is nice. Some D's and T's, it doesn't really like the way that I do it. But that's how you correct it. You tap on a word that you want to fix, and you can write in the individual letter. If you want to get rid of a word, you cross it out. If you want to insert something, go like that, make a space for you. And it also detects cursive impressively well. I haven't written cursive in ages, but I'll give it a shot here to show you. Oops, that was my palm touching the screen there. I'll start a little further over. Oh boy. This is one issue I should mention with this. So you're not familiar with an active digitizer. What happens is when the pen tip is near the screen, it starts tracking it even without touching it. And that automatically disables any touches coming from your fingers, which is nice because when your palm's down, it prevents your palm from activating anything on the screen. However, some tablets, the distance for when it starts that activation is different. So here it's only about a centimeter before it turns on and disables the touch input, which is a problem because when I come down on a piece of paper, I'm used to you put your palm first and then your pen tip down, and as you just saw, it actually minimized the screen there because I touched something with my palm. So you either have to get in the habit of kind of going pen close first and then your palm, or I haven't found a way to adjust the sensitivity of how far it starts to pick up the tip. I think that may be dependent on hardware, not something that you can adjust in software. I haven't had that problem so much with other tablet PCs that I've used. So when it flies around all of a sudden, that's usually what's happening, and unfortunately it does from time to time. So I'll try to make sure that doesn't happen, and as I was saying, write a few cursive sentences. There it goes again. So palm input is going to be a problem unless you really train yourself. I mean, part of the issue is that I've got the camera, the computer on a tilt here from where I am. So let's give it a shot a little bit more straight on to me, which may help me a bit. So as you can see, I got most of that, and you may have actually seen some of my words were off quite a bit. As I said, I haven't written cursive in a long time, but it still got them for the most part, and I can go back and make my corrections here. See, here's D, which is a word or a letter that it doesn't like how I do it, which is from the top down, but it picks it up every time if I do it, I guess, like a normal person from the bottom up, and it gets it no problem. Picked up some of these random marks in here, which are sometimes bothersome to delete because you were trying to cross them out. There we go. I guess it likes a diagonal swipe for individual letters. Yeah, it would seem so. So yeah, I actually also was writing in cursive, and then I did one in normal case, and then I went back to cursive, and it picked it all up fine, which is pretty neat. So the handwriting recognition in Windows 8 is pretty superb, except for those couple letters that it doesn't like the way I write them, and you may have some yourself because everybody writes a little bit differently. I'll give it one more go with a sentence. So there you have it. Appreciate you guys watching, and hope I've answered some of your questions. If you have any more, feel free to drop us a comment, and I'll see if I can do some testing and figure it out for you. If there's other applications you want to know whether or not the N-Trig supports, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. I hope this has been informative, and as I wrote, see us again on ultrabooknews.com if you want to learn more about the Duo 13. Thanks a lot.